The tale commences with the protagonist reflecting on his father's sage advice to prioritize the clan above all else, forsaking personal desires, and remaining a loyal companion to his brothers, akin to a shadow. Encircled by knights, a figure cloaked in black lies prone, blood dripping from his head and mouth. Approaching this scene, another figure comments on the grim spectacle before them. As the bloodied figure lies amidst the carnage, the observer acknowledges his remarkable feat of single-handedly combating the continent's strongest commanders, as expected of his renowned brother. Standing face to face, the observer addresses the protagonist as Cyan Vert, to which Cyan, with a cold and disheveled countenance, responds by calling the man Boris. Boris's mocking laughter is swiftly quelled as Cyan, seizing his dagger, conjures a mist charged with mana and energy, demanding answers regarding Boris's motives. With one hand poised with the dagger and the other resting at his side, Cyan questions Boris's allegiance, pondering whether the Emperor commanded his actions. Struggling against Cyan's formidable presence, Boris recoils from the potent mist, confirming rumors of Cyan's origins as an assassin from mist. Struggling to withstand Cyan's powerful aura, Boris explains that Mist is an organization akin to a shroud to their Knights of Light, and he intends to report to his superiors that he has eliminated an impure entity affiliated with the heathens. Cyan, summoning all his strength and preparing for another assault, challenges Boris to report him if he even possesses the means to do so afterward. Cyan assures Boris that there will be no tooth left in his mouth once he's finished. Attempting to hold his ground against Cyan's overwhelming presence, Boris advises Cyan that if he intends to unleash his secret power, now would be the time, as a 9th star magic barrier envelops them. Conjuring his power, Cyan resolves to escape this place somehow and uncover the mastermind behind this alongside his brother. With a menacing glare and his dagger raised, Cyan declares his intent to shatter the barrier. However, another figure intervenes, commanding Cyan to cease, as he strides past the knights and Boris, who bow in deference. Cyan is shocked as he recognizes the figure and recalls his father's teachings, to live for the clan, with his brother Ashel being an extension of that clan. Ashel Vert's success is Cyan Vert's success. As Ashel gazes disapprovingly at Cyan, the latter, bewildered, questions whether his brother was behind this. As Ashel approaches Cyan, sword in hand, Cyan falls to his knees. Ashel remarks on Cyan's confusion, stating that Cyan has fulfilled his duties admirably, for the clan, the people, and for Ashel himself, leaving Cyan stunned. As Ashel continues to stare downward, he remarks that he's merely attempting to lighten Cyan's burden. Cyan, lowering his head and resting the dagger on the ground, voices his confusion, asking if he's done something wrong. With a piercing gaze, Ashel declares that the ominous fog surrounding Cyan reduces him to nothing more than a murderer, questioning if Cyan can even be considered human anymore. Cyan is left stunned and speechless, sinking to his knees on the ground. Ashel's voice rises in anger as he accuses Cyan of deceiving them for too long, demanding to know if Cyan can truly claim ignorance of his sins. Hearing this, Cyan struggles to comprehend his brother's accusations, his anger and distrust growing until they morph into pure hatred, echoing in his mind. Cyan recalls his pivotal role in the Empire's succession battles, the Demon King army's raids, and the continent's unification wars, all undertaken in service to Ashel, whom Cyan considered his life's purpose. Frustrated, Cyan pounds the ground in frustration, lamenting his brother's abandonment after 2 decades of loyal service. Despite his injuries, Cyan stands up, determined to give his all to destroy Ashel, even if it means sacrificing himself. As Cyan unleashes his full power, soldiers and Ashel alike marvel at his seemingly inexhaustible strength, doubting his humanity. Surrounded by mist, Cyan calls out to his brother, mocking Ashel for attempting to kill his own younger brother out of fear and questioning his sanity. Angered, Ashel glares at Cyan with contempt as Cyan attacks him from both sides, preparing to strike his weak point. However, Boris conjures a barrier to shield Ashel from Cyan's attack, prompting Ashel to cruelly stab Cyan through the stomach, causing him to drop his dagger. As the two brothers face each other, Ashel remarks that he had intended to grant Cyan a painless death as a favor, considering their fraternal bond. However, he asserts that this is no longer possible now that Cyan has revealed his true nature. Cyan, writhing in pain from his wounds, listens in disbelief as Ashel declares that he knew Cyan's true colors all along, branding him as a demon and admitting that he never truly trusted Cyan from the outset. This revelation leaves Cyan utterly stunned as Ashel kicks him free from the sword and strides away, ordering the soldiers to depart and leaving Cyan lying wounded on the ground. Bleeding and in agony, Cyan curses internally, questioning if this is the end and reflecting bitterly on the foolishness of his life. His eyes darkening with anger, Cyan rises to his feet and lunges at Ashel as the latter walks away. Ashel notices Cyan's attack and turns to face him, prompting Cyan to seize his dagger and strike, nearly reaching Ashel's throat before being impaled by Ashel's sword, bringing about his demise. As Cyan jolts back to life, clutching his neck and breathing heavily, a maid scolds him for his prolonged sleep, urging him to pull himself together and get ready. Startled, Cyan shouts Emily's name, demanding to know why she's there. Oblivious to the confusion, Cyan remarks that it's been almost 20 years since they last saw each other, noting how she remains unchanged in his memory. Looking around, Cyan recognizes the room as his childhood quarters, noting the familiar furniture arrangement. Realization dawns on him as he wonders if he's regressed back to childhood. Lost in his thoughts, Emily accuses Cyan of stalling for time, insinuating that he's reluctant to go for training. A moment of silence fills the room as Cyan questions Emily about the training she mentioned. Outside, in the Vert clan duchy, Cyan looks around and is certain that he's been transported to the past. Contemplating his situation, he wonders if this is his life flashing before his eyes before death. Reflecting carefully, he recalls that this moment occurred 27 years ago, on March 1, 985, during the annual duel training session held by the duchy. The event, attended by Duke Vert, Cyan's father, and the duchy's owner, is a significant occasion. Cyan's opponent is Cyan Vert, his half-brother of the same age. Cyan's mother, Margaret Erzeth, is the Duke's wife, granting Cyan more attention despite both brothers being the youngest in the family. Cyan, as the Duke's illegitimate son, faced ridicule and became a laughingstock after the duel, which led his father to stop paying attention to him. Emily whispers to Cyan, suggesting that he surrender, but Cyan nonchalantly brushes off her suggestion, stating that he just needs to win. However, internally, he feels a pang of indignation at even a maid looking down on him. Drawing his rapier, Cyan notices its weight, realizing that he has returned to an age where his strength is negligible. He remarks to himself that the sensation he's feeling is definitely not a dream, nor is his life flashing before his eyes. He questions whether he's truly back in the past, as he's never even heard of a magic spell capable of creating such strong illusions. As Cyan stands in front of Cyan with his rapier, Cyan is surprised that Cyan didn't run off. Not finished with his thoughts, Cyan considers the possibility of changing the future as he looks towards his father, who announces the duel to begin. Cyan immediately launches at Cyan, taunting him and calling him an idiot. With a smirk, Cyan attempts to land a blow on Cyan, but Cyan is disappointed by his slow movements, silently questioning why Cyan is so sluggish. Easily evading the attack, Cyan steps away, surprising Cyan, who lands the strike on the ground. Angered, Cyan tries to strike again, accusing Cyan of cowardice for dodging. Before Cyan can follow through, Cyan swiftly disarms him by flinging his sword out of his hand with his rapier, and then kicks his leg, causing Cyan to fall to the ground in pain, screaming. The Duke is surprised, while Cyan's mother calls out to him, watching the match unfold. Looking down at Kranz, Cyan contemplates putting the sword to his throat to end the duel, but gripping his sword tightly, he realizes it's not enough. Throughout his childhood and even in the academy, Kranz had always bullied him for entertainment. With a fierce determination, Cyan resolves to stomp Kranz down so that he can never try anything against him again. In this life, Cyan decides he will pave his own path for himself. After the beatdown, the result of the duel is Kranz's loss, and the Duke orders to see Cyan, even clearing up his schedule. Surprised, Cyan wonders if his victory was that impressive to his father. Accompanied by a high-class knight, Yulkan, directly affiliated with the Duke, Cyan walks through the hallway, encountering Kranz's mother and her maid. Smirking inwardly, Cyan notices the discomfort on her face, realizing she must have been talking to his father about her son and now appears as if she stepped in something unpleasant. Outwardly, he politely asks her if Kranz is okay, addressing her as Madam. With an angered expression, Kranz's mother questions Cyan's audacity to ask such a question after beating up his brother, labeling him as thick-skinned. As both Cyan and the knight walk past them, Cyan replies that it's just how duels are. Unwilling to let go, she continues, remarking that bastards shouldn't be treated like legitimate children, shocking Cyan. She further insults him, implying that it's because his mother is a dirty whore that he's in this position. Angered by her words, Cyan feels his temper rising, remarking that she's crossed the line as he looks back at her with blazing red eyes, asking if he should kill her. Calming himself, Cyan decides not to kill the Duchess, knowing there is a better way to make her suffer. With a smirk, he vows to torture her slowly, painstakingly slowly. He then looks up at her and asks if she knows that he will be attending the academy alongside her son, Kranz. The Duchess, with a look of disdain, asks what his point is. With a petrifying smile, Cyan assures her that she would want her son to graduate with all his limbs intact, sarcastically adding that she doesn't seem worried about what will happen to him. The Duchess, her expression filled with disgust, raises her hand to swear at him, but is stopped by a knight. The knight apologizes to her, explaining that the Duke urgently summoned Cyan, and they cannot delay any longer. With a menacing glare, the knight tells the Duchess they will be leaving now, leaving her standing there with her maid, unsure of what to do. Smirking behind the knight, Cyan reflects that the Duke's orders are absolute. He is protected by a guard knight who was given the order and who will not submit to the Duke's wife. As Cyan approaches the door, the Duke instructs him to enter. The Duke, standing behind his desk, greets Cyan, who bows his head and acknowledges his father. Cyan silently reflects on the fact that it has been 15 years since they last met one-on-one. The Duke, Cyan Vert, regarded as the great feudal lord of Velias, a western territory of the Ushif Empire, commands Cyan to sit. Known as the Guardian of the Continent, Cyan is celebrated for halting the demon invasion for an extended period with his exceptional magical prowess and worldly wisdom. He bore a responsibility that no one had imposed on him until his death in battle against the Demon King's army. His ultimate desire was for peace across the continent, but Cyan's memories of him are quite different. Cyan, a man who chose to live his life serving others, often regards himself as foolish. Cyan observes Cyan and comments on how he precisely followed the sword and dodged it. Cyan, confused, is unsure what his father is referring to. Cyan continues, recounting the duel where Kranz charged at Cyan. He explains that Cyan had looked directly at the path of the swinging sword and then turned his body to dodge it. Cyan questions Cyan about when he learned to wield a sword. Expecting this, Cyan notes to himself how perceptive his father is and admits that he didn't formally learn, but rather practiced every night on his own. Cyan, pointing out his knowledge, states that Cyan never seemed interested in swordsmanship and asks why he hid such impressive skills. Cyan explains that he didn't want to attract attention. Willius retorts that despite this, Cyan went all out to defeat Kranz and questions why his actions after the match were necessary. Catching on to his father's question, Cyan reflects that his father's intentions seem probing, as if he's trying to gauge Cyan's capabilities. He remarks to himself that his father might be testing him. Responding to the question, Cyan tells his father that he wanted to prove himself. Willius asks what exactly Cyan wanted to prove. With a determined look, Cyan replies that he wanted to prove he is better than Kranz, despite sharing the same blood. This, he concludes, was the true meaning behind the duel. Willius starts to laugh, catching Cyan off guard. He praises Cyan, saying his answer was excellent, clear, concise, and level-headed. Willius admits he hadn't realized Cyan was so talented and expresses his delight, stating that Cyan will become a great and reliable support for Ashel one day. This confuses Cyan, who wonders why his father would ever expect him to become Ashel's helper. He notes, with some frustration, that his father remains as obsessed with Ashel as ever. Clenching his fists, Cyan listens as his father tells him that, while it's not exactly a trophy, he wants to reward him for his performance in the duel. Willius offers Cyan the opportunity to ask for anything he desires. With a fierce glare, Cyan resolves to himself that he will destroy everything Ashel has tried to accomplish. He then tells his father what he wants for his reward. A few moments later, Emily, shouting at Cyan, repeatedly asks if he really told his father that he wanted to go to the battlefront. Cyan nonchalantly responds that he did, but nothing is certain yet. Emily, still shouting, questions if he is out of his mind and if he understands what kind of place it is. Imagining the battlefield, she starts crying, remarking that it's swarming with wicked and terrifying demonic beasts. Velias, the western feud of the Ushif Empire, is the only place on the entire continent referred to as a battlefront. Even in the Lamia Valley, considered the front line, ferocious battles with demons have been ongoing for hundreds of years. Due to this, Cyan's father, who staunchly opposed the idea from the start, gave him the condition that he had to become worthy of going to Lamia Valley within 1 month. Looking at his hands, Cyan contemplates that he doesn't yet know what will determine his worth, but he must raise his physical strength as much as possible in the time he has been given. He is still weaker than his peers, but at least is lucky to retain the combat sense he had before regressing, along with the small amount of magic he sensed within himself. If he trains his body according to his capabilities, he can definitely make good use of it. As he finishes his thoughts, someone bursts into his room, shouting his name. Cyan recognizes her and calls out, Alice, as she grabs him by the collar and shouts if he is crazy for asking their father to send him to the battlefront. Cyan asks her to let go of him first. Alice releases him and remarks that it seems defeating Kranz has gone to his head, then tells Cyan to come with her to the rooftop. After a few moments, both brother and sister stand facing each other on the rooftop. Alice declares that they will begin once they draw their swords, adding that she'll permit Cyan to go to the battlefront if he can endure her attacks for 3 minutes. Cyan, displeased with this proposition, questions if Alice truly intends to push things this far. Ignoring his protest, Alice insists he answer one of her questions, her gaze suspicious as she asks if he's after the family's title. Cyan is taken aback by her reasoning, feeling utterly disinterested in what she's suggesting. Without waiting for his response, Alice grabs her sword, asserting that he truly desires the title, and demands he draw his sword. As Cyan does so, he sighs, recalling it hasn't even been half a day since his duel with Kranz, reflecting on the chaotic events of the day. Alice charges towards Cyan, catching him off guard, but he instinctively blocks her attack, surprising her. As their swords clash, Alice struggles to comprehend that Cyan, only 10 years old, managed to block her strike. Meanwhile, Cyan, in the midst of the clash, wonders if Alice is truly going all out against her younger brother, who is 7 years her junior. Leaping back to reposition herself, Alice reflects on the lightweight blade of his rapier, amazed that Cyan managed to parry her longsword's attack. Angered, she questions if his success was just luck and acknowledges that his intuition surpasses her expectations. With a shocked expression, Cyan realizes he's in a tough spot, calling out Alice's name in confusion. As both siblings clash again, Alice prepares to strike downward towards Cyan, but he blocks the attack and parries it with his weapon, swiftly maneuvering his rapier around her sword, nearly landing a killing blow. Realizing the perilous circumstances, Cyan grits his teeth and twists his weapon, causing both siblings to back off from each other. Landing on the edge, Cyan sweats profusely, acknowledging that it could have been disastrous had he not altered his sword's trajectory midway, potentially causing fatal harm to Alice. Mist swordsmanship skill, Thick Fog, primarily focuses on techniques designed to swiftly end lives, making it challenging for Cyan to fight without lethal intent due to his physical limitations. Gritting his teeth, Cyan questions how much time remains of the 3 minutes as he compensates for his weak strength by infusing his sword with mana, but he realizes he's nearing his limit. Breathing heavily, Alice calls upon Earth and Wind to serve as her swords, surprising Cyan with what appears to be 6th star magic. As Alice prepares to attack with her elemental blades, Cyan cries inwardly, questioning if she intends to kill him. Alice, losing her composure, continuously tells herself she can't lose, while Cyan realizes it's over just by the look in her eyes. Understanding he won't be able to block her attack, Cyan decides to trust his instincts as he leaps towards Alice. As Alice prepares her attack, Cyan runs towards her, readying himself to strike. Just as both siblings begin their strikes, Cyan pleads in his thoughts for Yulkan to intervene, and to his relief, Yulkan appears, halting Alice's attack with his sword while lifting Cyan with his other hand. After Alice's attack is thwarted, Yulkan reprimands her for being too harsh against a much younger opponent. Cyan, relieved, thinks to himself that he had been wondering when Yulkan would appear. Alice, regaining her senses, gasps and embraces Cyan, apologizing and crying, admitting that she must have lost her mind for a moment. She explains that she just wanted to prevent him from going to the battlefield and confesses her obsession with that idea. As she continues to cry on his shoulder, Cyan reflects that her behavior is typical of her, always striving so hard for everything. Cyan's sister was among the elite of the elites, achieving an S in all subjects at the Royal Academy, where the most talented children gathered, whether in swordsmanship, magic, or other fields of study. Her beauty was remarkable, earning her the nickname God's Child. Trained in swordsmanship from a young age, she was once mentioned as the future guardian of the continent alongside the oldest son, Cyan Vert. However, not long after joining the Knights of Light, she was tragically killed. Holding her tightly, Cyan silently vows to himself that he will protect her no matter what. Alice, looking at Yulkan, questions if he is the Duke's guardian knight and mentions that the Duke has just departed for war. Yulkan confirms that he is indeed carrying out the Duke's orders to protect the young master for a while, although he couldn't disclose this information earlier as it was meant to be kept secret. Cyan, still embracing his sister, reflects on how he felt Yulkan's presence ever since leaving the Duke's office, wondering if Yulkan would have revealed himself had he continued to ignore him. Pondering why his father ordered Yulkan to follow him, Cyan finds himself unable to stay awake and eventually dozes off, falling asleep in Alice's arms. Noticing his slumber, Alice gently supports him, relieved that he still has a childish side. The next day, Alice returns to the academy briefly before her graduation, having come back to see their father. Meanwhile, Cyan is consumed by the urge to grow stronger, focusing on strength training for the past 2 weeks. However, he finds himself stuck, unable to progress past 10 push-ups, a frustrating limitation considering his confidence in his strength in his previous life. Tears of pain well up in his eyes as he longs for a solution. In the midst of his inner turmoil, Emily enters and informs him of a package from Alice. Cyan eagerly stands up, asking if it truly arrived. Emily, holding the package, wrinkles her nose at the foul smell emanating from it. Cyan inwardly confirms that it's the hellhound's blood he requested from Alice, a rare item from Lamia Valley, confirming the rumors of its availability on the black market. Known for its sickening odor and the burning sensation upon consumption, the blood of demonic beasts is considered poisonous. However, Cyan is aware from his past life's experience that it permanently increases mana and strength. While most people dismiss it as a false rumor, Cyan knows its truth firsthand. As Cyan holds the blood of the hellhound in a bowl, Emily questions if he's truly going to drink it. With a sweating face, Cyan affirms her inquiry, assuring her not to worry. In his thoughts, Cyan reassures Emily, recalling his past experience adapting to her cooking skills and reminiscing about the first time he had her mushroom soup, which nearly stopped his heart with its taste. Compared to that, he believes, this hellhound blood is nothing. After drinking all of the blood and wiping the drooling crimson from his mouth, Cyan slams the bowl down, declaring it to be surprisingly good. With determination, he rises from the table, summoning Emily and informing her that he's going for a walk to test out his newfound strength. As he exits the mansion, Cyan pauses in the pathway, reflecting that it's been a while since he last visited this spot, and he had been eagerly anticipating this day since the last 2 weeks, the moment when Yulkan is absent from his regular reports. This place served as Cyan's sanctuary when he sought solitude. One day, Ashel received a divine revelation from the god of light, Lumendel, claiming that an ancient temple lies hidden somewhere in these mountains. Though Cyan didn't fully believe it, there was indeed a location where mana flowed intensely, a sign that the divine revelation might hold some truth, as he knows from his past life. With a grin on his face, Cyan conjures mana in his hands and smashes them into the ground, breaking the surface and revealing an entrance. In his thoughts, he calls out to his brother, imagining Ashel's reaction to his current actions, as he ventures into the entrance. As Cyan descends the stairs, he notes the stark difference from the last time he was here. This place was once an ancient temple dedicated to the god of light, Lumendel, until all its history was erased during the god-demon war that occurred 300 years ago. As he approaches the glowing object, Cyan reflects on the improbable existence of this place hidden in the mountains just behind the castle. Drawing closer to the radiant light, he anticipates encountering the temple's owner. Transported back to the year 999 before the foundation, on August 12th, humanity finally succeeds in driving out the Demon King's army from Velias. The demon army had been vastly superior, but humanity's discovery of ancient relics known as the God's weaponry turned the tide of the war. Among these relics was Duran d'Arc, a holy sword blessed by the god of light, Lumendel. This sword was credited as the primary reason for humanity's victory against the demons and is the same sword with which Cyan will meet his pitiful demise in the future. Standing beside the sword, Cyan ponders whether it might be the cause of his regression. Touching the sword, he finds nothing happening and kicks it in frustration. Walking away, he laments how the encounter ruined his mood, resolving to attend to the business that brought him here and then leave. As he passes beyond the light, he notices a shadow that feels unnaturally otherworldly. At first, it might seem to be the sword's shadow, but that's impossible, as this is no ordinary shadow. Where there is light, there must also be darkness. As Cyan places his hands on the shadow, a pathway opens before him, leading to another room hidden behind the altar of light. Entering the chamber, he spots a black dagger and remarks with familiarity, addressing it as "my sword" as he grabs its handle. With a shout, Cyan names the dagger demonic sword, Carve, and it exudes a powerful aura as he takes control of it. Gushing over the feeling of the sword, Cyan expresses his excitement, feeling the familiar presence of Carve, which ignites his desire to slay. Suddenly, black smoke rises from the ground, laughing and questioning Cyan's lack of fear and understanding of what it means to awaken the sword. Nonchalantly, Cyan admits he doesn't know and inquires if the sword's awakening signifies that it now belongs to him. As the shadow rises menacingly, it warns Cyan of the consequences of awakening a demonic sword and charges towards him, claiming ownership of his body. However, Cyan swiftly grabs the figure by the neck, asserting dominance and reminding them that the sword belongs to him. Struggling to breathe, the shadowy figure demands to know who Cyan is and how he can touch them. With a cold glare, Cyan reaffirms his ownership of the sword, causing the figure to transform into a human form and attack him with clawed hands. After dodging her strikes, Cyan stands his ground, emitting an immense aura. She questions why she can feel Eru's aura from him, to which Cyan confirms that she is right, declaring himself as the successor of Eru. With a grin, he announces the return of her master and commands Carem to stand down. Infuriated, Carem rejects Cyan's claim, belittling him as just a kid and refusing to accept him. She launches another attack, which Cyan deflects effortlessly. As they continue to exchange blows, Cyan realizes that words won't suffice and understands that the demonic sword's ultimate goal is to possess its user's body. With no other choice, he decides to go easy on her, knowing he must be cautious in his approach. As Carem attempts to attack Cyan once more, he smirks and activates his demonic sword control skill, causing her to flop to the ground. Cyan sternly tells her that he'll say it once, she should accept him as her owner while he's still being nice. Struggling to get up, Carem questions how Cyan can use demonic sword control, calling him arrogant. But before she can say more, Cyan repeatedly activates the skill, making her head bash into the ground multiple times. Buried halfway into the ground after the relentless skill activation, Cyan asks Carem if she will accept him now. Reluctantly, she agrees, referring to him as her master. As Cyan walks out of the room, he contemplates whether he should return since he's been gone for too long. Carem speaks out from the dagger, expressing how long it's been since she breathed fresh air as she transforms into an orb. Calling Cyan master, she asks for his name, to which he replies Cyan Vert. She remarks on Eru's choice of a kid like him, to which Cyan affirms and reveals that it was in his past life. This revelation confuses Carem, prompting Cyan to explain that he died before. As Cyan approaches the holy sword, Carem comments that it's still sleeping. Cyan informs her that he'll have to wait 20 more years for its owner. Carem questions Cyan's certainty about the future, to which Cyan swiftly cuts off the top of the dagger's handle in one strike, catching the piece and leaving the other part embedded in the ground. Shocked, Carem asks what he plans to do with it. Holding the top piece with a grin, Cyan remarks that he doesn't know yet but suggests he might make things more interesting in the future. The carriage comes to a halt, and Cyan steps out wearing armor, struck by the realization that the day had already arrived, feeling as though time had flown by. He greets the Duke with a bow, surrounded by knights. The Duke, standing before him, asks Cyan one last time if he is determined to go to the battlefront, giving him the option to back out. Cyan, looking up at the Duke, asserts that he is still determined, his heart set on the battlefront. Upon hearing this, the Duke orders Yulkan to proceed, and Yulkan affirms, producing a scroll which Cyan realizes may be summoning something. As Yulkan releases a seal from the scroll, a hellhound emerges. Cyan withdraws his sword, acknowledging the effort his father and the knights must have put into preparing this test for him. Observing the knights preparing their swords, Cyan notes their readiness to intervene if the situation turns dire. The Duke, standing behind Cyan, emphasizes the importance of being responsible for his actions and proving his resolve by passing this trial. In a flashback, Yulkan recalls when Cyan requested a duel with him, confusing him initially. Cyan explains that with only 3 days left until the deadline of his promise to his father, he can't afford to waste time swinging his sword aimlessly. With determination, Cyan expresses his desire to experience a real fight and asks Yulken for help. Yulken suggests that Cyan should have asked someone his age, like his brother Kranz, but Cyan reveals that Kranz always avoids him. Annoyed, Yulken agrees to duel with Cyan, agreeing to only use his sword sheath and focus on defense, allowing Cyan to attack freely. Cyan expresses gratitude and asks for one more favor, instructing Yulken not to inform his father about what transpires during the duel, issuing it as an order, leaving Yulken perplexed. Cyan swiftly dashes towards Yulken, launching an attack with his rapier that Yulken manages to block. To Yulken's surprise, he realizes that Cyan's attack carries considerable weight, far beyond what he would expect from a 10-year-old. As he contemplates Cyan's prowess, Cyan swiftly moves to his next attack, demonstrating remarkable agility. In an instant, Cyan disappears from Yulken's front, leaping into the air and striking down behind him. Yulken, taken aback by Cyan's sudden maneuver, reacts swiftly to block the attack. Cyan continues his relentless assault, each strike met with Yulken's expert defense. Cyan prepares for a finishing blow, pulling back his weapon, but Yulken easily intercepts the strike once again. Landing gracefully on his feet after the failed attack, Cyan acknowledges that he still can't overcome Yulken, expressing gratitude for the opportunity to spar with him. Yulken, catching his breath, commends Cyan for his efforts, marveling at how much the once weak young master has grown. Returning from a brief flashback, Yulken reflects on his intuition from before, realizing that if his hunch was correct, Cyan has the potential to overcome any trial that comes his way. As Cyan stands before the Hellhound, the beast leaps at him, prompting Cyan to swiftly retaliate with a decisive blow that sends the monster flying backward. Cyan realizes that his current strength is insufficient for prolonged combat with such a creature, so he resolves to end the battle swiftly. He dashes toward the Hellhound, intending to finish it off with a single attack, and delivers a clean strike that fells the beast, stunning the watching knights and bringing a smile to the Duke's face. Standing next to the fallen Hellhound, Cyan can't help but feel it's a waste, considering the amount of blood spilled. Reflecting on the absurdity of hiding something like this, he retrieves his rapier from the creature's corpse. Cyan's father praises him for his performance, expressing pride, and announcing that they will soon meet again at the battlefront. Cyan thanks his father as they depart from the testing ground. As Cyan's father walks away, Karam appears in her spiritual orb form behind him, addressing him as the master, and expressing frustration. She questions why he treats her like a kitchen knife despite her being a demonic sword. In response, Cyan assures her that he has plans to utilize her fully in the future, prompting Karam to express her annoyance, stating that Cyan should have awakened her when it was time to use her.